Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. And today we are going to continue where we finished in the last class before the holidays, which was the triangular arbitrage. We're going to continue with the next step because in the triangular arbitrage, you remember everything was about location, right? Like you had to do a strategy where you could make profit in moving between three countries. That's why it's a triangle, right? So now it's going to change a little bit because now we are going to add a new dimension. We are going to add time. Previously, we only focused on space, different countries, but now it's different. Now we are going to include time. So let me start with a story. I want to go back to the roots and start with a story because I need to explain an important concept. And in this story, I want you to, let me get the pen, black. So in this story, I want you to imagine this. Imagine that you live in the border between Mexico and the US. So you live exactly in the border. And there are some things that you need to know. First thing, you can cross the border freely from, you can be in here or here, you can pass freely. It doesn't cost anything. You are literally 10 meters away from the border, so you can move freely between the US and Mexico. That's the first thing I want you to imagine. The second thing is that imagine that in the US, they sell a very nice hamburger. This is my drawing of a burger. They have this burger. It's really nice. And it costs $1. And now imagine that in Mexico, they also have the same burger. It's the same taste, the same size, everything is the same. And it also costs 1 peso. And the final thing that I want you to imagine, and maybe this is the most difficult part, is to imagine that the exchange rate between the peso and the dollar is 1 peso per dollar, only one, right? So now, if imagine all these three things, you live in the border, it doesn't cost you to move between the US and Mexico. There is a burger that is really delicious in the US, and you can have the same burger, exactly the same burger in Mexico, $1 and 1 peso, and the exchange rate is 1 to 1. So imagine that's what's happening. And my question is, where do you want to buy the burger? In the US or in Mexico? Where I think the logic answer is that it doesn't matter, right? Because if you buy it in the US, you can exchange your peso to $1 because 1 peso equals $1. You can exchange that and then you can buy the burger at $1, which is the same as 1 peso. Or if you are if you are in Mexico, you can buy it in Mexico. So it doesn't really matter, right? But now imagine that 1 year after this, there is some inflation in Mexico, like the prices of bread, meat, the prices of employees in Mexico get more expensive. And then the price of the burger changes to 2 pesos now. So there is an increase on the price from 1 peso to 2 pesos. Where would you buy the burger? I think the logic answer is in the US because you can change 1 peso to dollar and you can buy the same burger at 1 peso, right? Because the exchange rate is 1 peso to dollar. So imagine that happens and a lot of Mexicans go to the US to buy burgers. A lot of Mexicans move to buy burgers in the US. So what do you think will happen in the near future with the rate? If there is an increase on the demand of dollars, what do you think will happen in here? The dollar will get more expensive, right? So this will probably change until it reaches 2 pesos per dollar. Why 2? Because then, what did I do? Well, because then if that happens, it will make no sense. It will come back to balance where it doesn't matter if we buy it in Mexico or in the US. At 2 pesos per dollar, you will exchange your 2 pesos for $1, and with that dollar, you will buy your burger, or you can spend 2 pesos in Mexico. This is the balance, right? So this is the fair exchange rate. So in this story, I am showing you that an increase on the price of the goods in a country might depreciate its currency, right? That's the takeaway point from this video. If things get more expensive where you live, people will prefer to buy the foreign good, and it will depreciate your currency. This is the case of the Mexican peso. So if we follow this logic, it's not a good idea in terms of exchange rate to have increases on prices, right? So that's one of the reasons why countries don't like high inflation rates, because they tend to punish their currency. Okay, so let me continue. I am going to ask you an interesting question. Can the Mexican peso be one-to-one with the dollar? Well, if we think with what we have just learned from the previous theory, is that the answer is no, or only if the inflation rate in Mexico is lower than in the US. Because if we analyze this with real life data, of course, Mexico has more inflation. So in the future, instead of getting closer, it will tend to go more differently, right? It will tend to increase the price of the dollar more and more and more because we have more inflation. So what we have just learned are the basics or the foundations of the whole international financial management theories. This thing that I explained with a burger story is what economists developed in the early 20s, 30s, 40s. In the first part of the last century, they developed this theory that they call the law of one price, right? That's the name of the theory. I have that in the next slides. So this theory where we think about, I think it's in the next one here. It's called the law of one price, where we assume that the prices of goods change the exchange rate. Of course, this is the first theory that is the foundation of everything. There are some improvements of theory that we're going to learn in the next sessions, but for today's class, we're going to focus entirely on this law of one price, right? We are going to learn a lot about this. So, and finally, three very important things that you need to understand, and three assumptions from this theory. Because every theory has its assumptions, right? Like every theory has assumptions. And this theory has three assumptions. So the first assumption is the same product is being sold in two markets. That's why I said it's the same burger, it tastes the same, it's the same size, everything. Second, there are no restrictions on the sale. So that means that I can cross between the two countries and I can buy it in the US or Mexico. It doesn't affect me. There are no taxes. There is no restriction on movement. And finally, there are no transportation costs. So in here, there is no transportation cost from moving to one side to the other. There is no transportation cost attached to the burger. So this is the basics from the law of one price. In the next video, I will talk about an application of the law of one price, because we have two applications. One that is called the absolute PPP, absolute purchasing power parity. I will explain that in the next video, and then we have relative version of that. So let me continue with that, and I will do some application.